entertained of not going to Cincinnati. It did at least happen. And as I mentioned in Playmakers, and as someone close to the situation told me, if he had been from Athens, Georgia, and not Athens, Ohio, he wouldn't have gone to the Bengals. But the Cardinals, I think, are the one team that would be the closest in mindset and approach to Mike Brown, and the attitude would be, sorry, we got your rights this year and next year, because surely they'll pick up the fifth-year option. So you play for us or you play for no one. So if you want to play football, you play football for us. We're not going to trade you. We're not taking the calls. If anyone who calls us mentions the word Kyler at any point in the conversation, we're going to hang up. We're not trading you. You can't make us trade you. Oh, I know the age of player empowerment has arrived, and it's more like the NBA. Not in Arizona. Nope, we're not going to do it. If they take that approach, he's stuck, Peter. He's stuck.
Then you ask yourself, if you're Kyler Murray, how important is $5.5 million to me? That's what you ask yourself. And if you're the Arizona Cardinals, you say, we drafted Kyler Murray coming off a 3-win season in 2018. We were bereft of hope. We did not trust our quarterback at all. We knew we needed a quarterback. And so, what happened this past year? Now, they got a little bit of an assist from Colt McCoy winning 2 games. But what happened last year? What happened is that the Arizona Cardinals won 11 games. So they've gone from 3 wins pre-Kyler to 11 wins in the year that Kyler, midway through the season, was a legitimate MVP candidate. And, you can't invent that, we'll be fine without Kyler. You can't do that because they won't be fine without Kyler. And so I look at this, Mike, and I think that Kyler Murray and Eric Burkhart have a little bit of power in this case, because the one thing that the Arizona Cardinals do is that they're going to get fans to come to their games. But the minute that the fans perceive that they're trying to take shortcuts or they're not all in it to win, everything like that, what happens to the big red sea out in the Valley of the Sun? What happens? Do they stop coming? Do they stop loving the team again, as it was formerly, many years ago, really? But that is the big thing that I would be worried about if I were Michael Bidwill.
I think one of the realities, too, look, I think, and this is what makes me believe the Cardinals will try older school approaches with Kyler Murray before they would cry uncle and pay him anything close to what he wants. I think that I don't know this, but I think that they were behind some of the narratives that came out after the season. The story about Bidwill being furious with Cliff Kingsbury, and he kind of was hanging by a thread for a little while before he got an extension. That did not sit well with Eric Burkhart, who represents both Kingsbury and Murray. And I think that if the Cardinals had fired Cliff Kingsbury, they would have had a definite issue with Kyler Murray, who would have wanted out if Kingsbury had been fired. So Burkhart leverages Murray's presence on the team to get Kingsbury an extension, not even a lame duck, let's see what you do in 2022 before we decide whether you're our guy long term. He gets him an extension, and now Burkhart is stirring up this stuff with Kyler. I could see Michael Bidwill being frustrated by that because, hey, we gave your guy, the head coach, a new contract with the anticipation that Kyler would stay. And then the stuff that came out about Kyler Murray, the whole idea that he's self-centered and finger-pointing and immature, I think that was a manifestation of the team's frustration and effort, clumsy or otherwise, to try to knock down his expectations a little bit before it's time to negotiate. That didn't work either. That's just what makes me think that the Cardinals may not view this the way that other teams would. The Cardinals may have a different mindset, and there may be a stubbornness there. And Kyler Murray may have to hold out. And one of the realities of his contract, and I got a copy of it last night to make sure this was accurate. He's due to make $5.5 million this year, but $4.524 million of it comes in the form of a roster bonus that is only paid if he's in camp on the third day of the process. If he's not there by day 3, that $4.5 million goes away forever. Yeah, he'll make more money down the road, but that $4.5 million does not get paid. So it's not a matter of the fines that he would owe, $40,000 a day. That can be waived. But if he's not there, third day of camp, $4.5 million gone for good, which means if he's not there third day of camp, Peter, he may not be coming at all. He may say, no, I'm not playing in 2022. Now, he'd also owe $5.8 million back in unearned signing bonus money, but that's when we would know this is real. If he doesn't show up day 1 and isn't back by day 3, this is real. And he seriously is considering doing something other than playing football in 2022. And as we've said before, he's the one guy in the NFL right now who could go get a baseball glove and jump into the Oakland A's organization at some level. Obviously not at the highest level, but if he wanted to do something to occupy his time, and he said time and again he'd love to play baseball, he'd love to play both, he can just go play baseball until this is all figured out.
Mike, what happens with clauses like that, and of course it's a legitimate clause. I didn't know until you just said that. I didn't know how the 5.5 was going to be paid out this year, but that is illuminating. At the end of the day, though, in my opinion, it's not that illuminating. It's illuminating as a factoid for today and where his state of mind would be if he did indeed not show up in camp by day 3. But at the end of the day, teams pay that stuff back. They always do. They always will account for that in whatever future deal they would do with a player. So, in my opinion, I think when you look at where Kyler Murray is right now, all right, I don't believe he's playing this year for $5.5 million. I've said it 6 weeks ago. But the issue is how exactly does this get resolved? I don't think the Cardinals are one of these teams that says, we're going to write you a check now for, $55 million on a signing bonus to lock you up for the next X number of years. That's just not how they do business. My feeling is this is done with guaranteed money year by year by year that will allow Kyler Murray to get on the fringe of what the great quarterbacks are making right now. Those are the biggest things that, in my opinion, will be done to get this contract done at the end of the day. And look, I believe after a lot of huffing and puffing and all this stuff, that Kyler Murray will go back to the Cardinals, and there will be a new contract of some sort, by the start of this season. But I do think there's going to be a lot of choppy waters before that.
Well, it all comes back to where you peg Kyler Murray's value. We said this a few weeks ago. 4 or 5 years back, the next guy up for a contract became the highest paid player in NFL history by a little bit more than the last guy. Derek Carr, who got an extension this week, was one of those. It started with Andrew Luck, and it went to Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan. It was one after another after another. Now, look at this spread. Look at that. From 1 to 10. You've got $20 million there. How do you resolve where Kyler Murray lands on that range when you also accept the fact that the cap is going to continue to go up and up and up? See, that's what I can't reconcile here. Time is on Kyler Murray's side, but he's run out of patience. He wants his deal now, even though the more time passes, the more he's going to get. And I think Eric Burkhart wants both. Eric Burkhart wants a deal now that takes into account where the puck is going. That's what's going to make it even harder. So I said earlier, maybe the Cardinals are in the $30 to $35 million range and Burkhart's in 45 to 50. Hell, for all I know, Burkhart's in 55 to 60 because he's thinking, number one, franchise quarterbacks are always the most valuable player on the field and should be paid accordingly. And number two, the cap keeps going up. So if I'm going to commit for 4 or 5 years, that deal needs to take into account where the cap is going to be. Here's my projection, Mr. Bidwell, of where the cap is going to be. And the percentage that you're paying my client is going to get smaller and smaller because the cap is going to mushroom. So we need to take this into account. That's why I've been a proponent for years, Peter, of locking in a fixed percentage of compensation for the quarterback. So they know, they have certainty as to how much of the cap is going to go to him and how much of the cap they're going to have left for everybody else. This would be an ideal spot to do that. Not that anyone's going to do it. I'm not even sure that anybody even tries to do it anymore. Although maybe Deshaun Watson could have gotten it in Cleveland. But I think that's the problem. You're going to have a fundamental disagreement of Kyler Murray's value. And that's what could keep this thing from resolving the way that it should.
You know what's funny about contracts in the NFL? I'm writing about this for Monday. It's funny that today, in today's football, the last few contracts, if you take them on average per year and not necessarily what this single year is, if you look at that and if you give Aaron Rodgers, if you assign him a value of $50 million or $50.3 million, whatever it is, that is a much bigger percentage of the salary cap than it was 10 years ago. Let's say, I think 10 years ago, Dwight Freeney was the biggest per year average at $19 million. And what is happening right now, Mike, is that the way I look at it, the agents have done a very good job of saying, okay, we're going to play hopscotch with these contracts. But look at it, Mike. The only position that the hopscotch is going as crazy as quarterbacks is wide receiver. Is it happening the same at tight end? No. Is it happening the same at tackle? No. Is it happening the same even at edge rusher? Not exactly. Some, but certainly not exactly. And I think what is so interesting to look at now is that if you're Eric Burkhardt, what do you argue? If I'm Eric Burkhardt, I'm only arguing for one thing: short-term deal. Because I know the Cardinals are not giving me Aaron Rodgers money. They're probably not giving me Deshaun Watson money or Patrick Mahomes money. I will settle for $40 million a year for the next 3 years with some guarantees built in. And just because I want to get another bite at the apple in 2025.
That's when the Kyler Murray playing style becomes a real issue. Now, look, we know how these quarterbacks or these contracts, go 5-6 years. It's after 2 or 3 that the team's able to tear it up and move on anyway. So if that's the case, why not do a short-term deal? But the unique challenge in handling Kyler Murray's career is, given his size, given that one of his most important attributes is his incredible speed and agility, this isn't a guy who's going to be playing when he's 44. This isn't a guy who's going to have full tread on the tire and be able to zip around like we saw in the clips we were showing earlier. This is going to become the guy who's more like he was in the playoff loss to the Rams, where the mobility wasn't there. I think he had 2 carries for 6 yards in the whole game. He didn't have that same punch. You take that out of his game, it's not good enough for the NFL. So this is the ultimate, because at the other positions, this is true. Get what you can while you can, because you may not be able to get it for very long. Kyler Murray is the ultimate example of a quarterback who better get what he can while he can, because there's no guarantee he's going to be able to get it for very long. He's not going to be playing deep into his 30s, more likely than not, which raises the stakes on this contract. And look, I'm sure Eric Burkhardt has a plan, but the Cardinals have a plan too. And that's where this thing is going to get very interesting. And I don't believe in accidents or coincidences, especially when you're talking about deals like this. The fact that this is all coming up now, with now 13 days to go until the draft is not an accident or a coincidence. This is, I want to know what you're going to pay my guy, because if you're not going to pay him, I want to find someone who will.
Yeah, I just don't think the Cardinals are going to do that. I don't see it. And honestly, maybe the Carolina Panthers would move heaven and earth to try to get him. If David Tepper picks up the phone today, or probably would have done it yesterday, and calls Scott Fitterer as general manager or Matt Rule and says, get on this right now. I want to find out if there's any way we can get Kyler Murray. Then, then and only then would I think that there was a possibility that this could happen. Because right now, I don't think it's a possibility. I just don't see the Cardinals moving him in the next 2 weeks.
I would agree with you. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say he's not going to be traded, just because the Cardinals are not wired to go along with this new trend where, and we talked about this after Tyreek Hill, you have to have one team that says F them picks and another team that says, I'll take it. I'll gladly shed the obligation to pay this guy a ton of money, and I'll reload my roster with everything you're going to give up for him. And you have to have each side of that equation in order to make it work. And that's the other side of this, too, that we have to take into account. Let's say the Cardinals will trade him. And let's say that there are teams interested. What do you offer for Kyler Murray? Because, number one, you're going to have to pay him a contract above and beyond what the Cardinals are willing to do. And you have to make the Cardinals happy as well. That's what's so stunning about, like, the Tyreek Hill deal. They make him one of the highest paid players in receiver, the Dolphins do, or one of the highest paid receivers in football, and they give the Chiefs 5 picks. That the Chiefs, it was enough to get the Chiefs say, fine, we'll do this deal. I just don't know that you find a team, even if the Cardinals are willing to do it, that put enough on the table to get the Cardinals to say, I'll take it, and enough on the table financially to get Eric Burkhardt to say, that's where we want to play. See, it's almost like, Peter, the Cardinals' best move here, their checkmate move, could be to say to Eric Burkhardt, go ahead. Try to find someone. Do what the Chiefs did with Drew Rosenhaus. Go ahead. Start texting general managers. See if you can find somebody who'll give us what we want and we'll give you what you want. Sometimes getting a chance to see what else is out there for a player who wants a lot is the best way to get the player's expectations to come down.
It's not a bad idea, because what Kansas City did with Drew Rosenhaus, I don't think we've talked enough about how amazing what happened with Tyreek Hill and Kansas City and Miami is. That was absolutely amazing. And here's why it was amazing, okay? And why, the Kyler Murray thing is not starting out the way this thing did. Basically, Brett Veach, the GM of the Chiefs, told Drew Rosenhaus, you can go out and see who might be interested in him, but you cannot talk about exact figures. You can give teams the parameters of what you're talking about. And the parameters of what they were talking about, in essence, is Devontae Adams. Somewhere right in there. But he couldn't be